Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate all you being here. Mr. Roth, you're quite busy. We see you here a good bit. So, Mr. Patterson, the Office of Inspector General reported that the FPS provides a vehicle to every law enforcement officer in FPS so they can respond to after-hours incidents. First question, are specific officers assigned to respond after hours, or is this something that's expected of all officers at any time?
Yes, sir. It's expected of all officers at any time. Each officer is assigned a portfolio of federal facilities. Okay, so when there is a problem at one of those federal facilities, they are the first to be notified that there's a problem at that facility, and they need to respond to as they feel necessary to that event.
Can you give me an example of a couple of federal facilities that maybe be a federal courthouse?
Oh, yes, sir. We've got
office,
federal courthouses across the country, Social Security facilities, IRS facilities, any number of facilities that
So every officer that works there will have a vehicle, even if they're just manning the front entrance. There's a federal courthouse that one of my colleagues has a congressional office in.
Right. Yes, sir.
There may be 3 officers up front that are there manning the entrance that you go through the metal detector. Each one of those would have a vehicle?
Yeah. Let me explain that. The folks that you see at the federal courthouse are inside the courthouse are court security officers. They work for the U.S. Marshal Service.
Okay.
We don't have our officers, our law enforcement folks don't stand post.
Okay.
At any of these, they don't stand post anywhere. Okay, our job is to oversight those folks that do stand post. Okay, so what we do is we hire a number of folk through contract agencies that provide security services at IRS, Social Security, and other facilities across the nation. So our job is to ensure that, one, those folks are, doing what they need to do. Secondly, we have a responsibility to every facility that we protect to ensure that we mitigate the threat at those facilities. So we do a security assessment at each one of those facilities, and it's on a timeline when we have to do this. So every one of our inspectors has to go out and do that. We also have a requirement to do what we call post-inspections. So every facility that has let's say has a guard, protective security officer, and they may have a physical checkpoint, where you have to go through with a magnetometer. Well, we have a responsibility to ensure that, one, that they're doing their job there and that the equipment there is working appropriately. So our folks are on the go quite a bit, and that's what they're doing. They're moving from one facility to another to ensure that what's operating is operating effectively.
So envision that one officer may have 3 or 4 facilities in his portfolio?
I have some officers that have as many as 20 or 30 facilities in their portfolio.
Do you have facilities that have more than one officer?
No, sir.
Assigned to it?
No, sir.
Okay. On average, how often do you get calls for off-duty incidents?
Oh, every day. Every night. Every night an alarm goes off somewhere in the nation at a facility. Every night there is some vagrant who's trying to do something at one of our federal facilities. We get calls all the time. I can't predict where we're going to get calls. To give you an example, we had when the incident happened in Baltimore and there was a riot, we responded to that because the federal facilities were at risk, and our folks out of Philadelphia could not get down in a timely manner. So we pulled folks out of Washington, D.C., which would normally been directed here, to go up there. So we got them out of bed, go up there and help with the protection of those facilities there. So at any given time, we may find ourselves anywhere. Just as when the Secretary said that he started Operation Blue Surge right after the incident in Canada, that he wanted to ensure that there was a higher profile around certain federal facilities in the nation. We pull folks from all over the country to do that. Many of those folks drove to those facilities. They didn't fly, they drove.
Are these vehicles fully emergency vehicles, lights?
Yes, sir. And that's another thing. We have to ensure that these vehicles meet the standards across 50 states because we never know where these vehicles are going to be. So what we do is we ensure that they meet the national standards for lights and equipment. But the most important thing, as far as I am concerned, every day is officer safety. Officer safety is paramount. So we have to make sure that they have the right equipment and and whatever it is that they need in those vehicles to ensure that they get their safety, are able to do their job and return home.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roth, do you concur with your investigation of the answer to the question?
The issue we had was with Region 11, which is the National Capital Region, and they operate a 24/7 sort of shift. They have 3 shifts of officers, unlike a typical federal response facility. So, I mean, one of the things I would say is for Region 11, we had real concerns because their policies within Region 11 said you were not going to be called out after hours, and yet they were issued home to work. We asked about that justification, and the answer we got is, well, we need to change the policy with regard to Region 11 to ensure that would be the case. The second thing I would say with regard to the travel, again, all we can go on is the data, and the data says that 47%, I think 49% of all the FPS vehicles have fewer than 12,000 miles a year. So I have no doubt that, in fact, there are many officers who are on the road constantly and putting miles on their cars, but there are a significant number of cars that do not. And in fact, we had 234 cars that had fewer than 5,000 miles per year on the car. So we can only go by the data, and the data shows that there's vastly underused. And as I indicated before, there are about 250 more cars than there are actual officers on duty.
Mr. Chairman, I know I've exceeded my time. If I could be extended, or if someone else would, I'd like to hear Mr. Patterson respond to the issue that was brought up by Mr. Roth is the Region 11 having a policy of not responding after hours, if that's appropriate.
Yes, sir. There is no policy that Region 11 will not respond. There was a standard operating procedure that was we have a dispatch facility in Suitland, Maryland. Someone had issued to that dispatch facility that we have 5 folk who are on duty after hours, vice the 60 who are on duty during the day. What they were trying to achieve there was that if you're going to call someone out for a response in the metropolitan area, please try to call one of those first before you break. Now, we've done away with that policy. Right. You will call whoever's responsible for that facility. They will be called. But that was what that was about. It wasn't don't call anybody. It was that if you're going to call someone, try to call one of those 5 first before you call the others.
Okay. And to thank both the gentlemen, and I yield back the time I've already exceeded.